Our sourdough library hosts starters from all over the world. To study them in more detail, we work with Professor Marco Gobbetti of the Faculty of Science and Technology in Bolzano, Italy. Marco is a personal friend and one of my sourdough heroes.
We are at the Noi Tech Park. The Noi Tech Park is the technology park of the Free University of Bolzano, where are located food science laboratories, and in particular my laboratory, Micro for Food laboratory, having a surface of about 500 meters square. We have the capability to ferment everything. We are carrying out most of the food processing dealing with fermentation. So milk and milk derivatives, flour and bread making are making baked goods, fruits and vegetables. And in the last year, we also pay attention to the intestinal human microbiome as it could be influenced by dietary habits and in particular by food fermentation.
Fermentation. Now that's why I'm here. But how can this wonder of nature help us?
Fermentation is a traditional technique that started I don't know how many centuries ago. But now we have all the techniques helping us to explain not how to carry out the fermentation, but to explain the secret that is behind the fermentation. So we have the capability to look to the interactions between microbes. We have the capability to pay attention also to microbes which are in a subdominant condition, but they are very important for the consortium. All the fermentation are related not to one microbe, but all the fermentation are related to a consortium of microbes. And each of these microbes has a pivotal role that we have to understand, and we have to realize conditions for getting resilient consortium and stable fermentation. So the techniques now give us the possibility to understand this complex networking and these complex metabolic interactions among microbes, which in my view is the secret of the fermentation. What I would like to stress is that fermentation has to be carried out having skill. Since we are working with microbes, that 99% of the cases are our friends, but we have to pay attention and we have to know everything about their physiology and biochemistry, which help us to carry out very suitable processes. Some of the risks related to the fermentation, one of the main activities of the fermentation is the decrease of the pH. The decrease of the pH has the capability to inhibit pathogens, but you can get a decrease of pH in a very short time or in a very long time. If you get the decrease of pH in a very long time, you will increase the resistance, the responses of negative microbes and the adaptation to this low pH, which may have behind risk of illness or risk of spoilage. So you have to know that in a very rapid time you have to get the decrease of the pH, and you have to know which type of microbes can help you in getting such decrease.
Yes, fermentation is amazing, if it's done in the right way. Only, what are the benefits of using sourdough in breads?
The sourdough is the only way to contribute to the health of humans, allowing to eat cereals without any problems, but increasing the uptake of nutrients which are very important for the prevention of diseases and helping humans to keep a healthy status. The future of the sourdough fermentation is to demonstrate the advantages for human health and nutritional point of view. I can list the main results concerning the use of dietary fibers, the use of milling byproducts, the decrease of salt, the decrease of the glycemic index, as well as the reduction of the sensitivity to gluten. One term that we have to use in nutrition is bioavailability or bioaccessibility, which means that the most important thing is not the content, for instance, of vitamins, minerals, or free amino acids, but their bioavailability for absorption by humans. What happened during sourdough fermentation? That most of the phytic acid that is present in cereals, but the same has been demonstrated for legumes, is degraded by the phytase activity that is already present in the flours. But to be active, such enzyme, phytase, needs an activation, and this activation relates to the decrease of the level of pH. So if you want to produce a bread having a higher bioavailability of minerals, of free amino acids and of proteins, you need to decrease the level of pH to activate phytase, which have the capability to degrade phytic acids and making free amino acids, minerals, and proteins.
Now that we have heard how sourdough fermentation unleashes the full potential and goodness of cereals, we wanted to examine wholemeal breads more closely. We've certainly seen increased demand for such breads over the last decade, especially as consumers believe, and this is confirmed by our Taste Tomorrow survey, that whole grains and seeds are power ingredients. How does sourdough help in this particular case?
In wholemeal breads, many of the recommendations we received is to increase the consumption of fibers, but the fiber will decrease the sensory and in some cases the rheology properties of the bread or other baked goods. The only way to exploit the potential of fibers or wholemeal breads is to use the sourdough fermentation, which will increase the availability of fibers and will increase the sensory properties, thus helping humans to increase the consumption of such type of food products.
Another important category of foods that can contribute to the nutritional values of bread is legumes. Chickpeas, beans, lentils are possible ingredients. How can sourdough help us benefit from this strong food group?
Legumes are raw matrix that may increase the nutritional value of cereals. So the main step is to include legumes in the formula. But to exploit the potential of legumes, you need sourdough fermentation, which may help you to increase the percentage of legumes that you can use in the recipe, to increase the sensory properties, and also to exploit the nutritional value of legumes in a complex recipe that is using cereals and legumes. This should be done for all salted baked goods.
When consuming sourdough bread, our feeling of hunger is less than when compared to regular yeast-fermented baked goods. One consequence is that we have a reduced craving for sweet goods. Foods with a low glycemic index make you feel fuller for a longer time and help control the appetite.
People have to know that a sourdough bread is a sourdough with an intermediate or better low glycemic index because the biological fermentation. If you ask me which are the causes for the decrease of the glycemic index, I cannot properly answer to you. There are many causes, but all these are related to the biological acidification, like the synthesis of organic acid, like the decrease of the pH, like the activity of sourdough lactic acid bacteria and yeast, which favor the emptying, the rapid emptying of our gastrointestinal tract, and the synthesis of bioactive peptides that may have a role on the decrease of the glycemic index. Nevertheless, the message that we have to send to people is that if you consume a sourdough bread or a sourdough baked good made with a long time fermentation, you will have a low glycemic index food.
Bread is a wonderful food and possibly one of the most nutritional on the planet. Even more remarkably, it brings together and unites other fermented foods like cheese, sausage, chocolate, wine and beer. And yet, some people still suffer from bloating caused by gluten. Why and how is sourdough bread a solution for this?
What people have to know is that during sourdough fermentation there is a decrease of the gluten content and increase of the free amino acids, which help the digestion. We carried out a human in vivo study showing that the sourdough bread compared to the baker's yeast bread is more digestible. And we demonstrated that both looking for the emission of gas during digestion, looking for the transit of the bread during our intestinal tract, and looking for the absorption of nutrients like free amino acids. All the analyses were in a unique way showing that the sourdough bread was more digestible than all the other types of bread.
It is clear that baked goods made with sourdough are more digestible than yeast-made breads. But what else can sourdough do? The World Health Organization recommends that adults should consume less than 5 grams of salt per day.
One of the main recommendations we received from the nutritional point of view is to decrease the content of salt in our foods. The sourdough fermentation has the capability to make free amino acids. The flavor deriving from free amino acids may mask, may cover the reduction of salt. The sourdough fermentation is the only way to considerably decrease the content of salt because the sourdough fermentation itself is giving a flavor and it's giving a taste that may mask the reduction of the content of salt.
One of the things I remember from my conversations with Marco is that sourdough bread is highly beneficial for the gut microbiome. But how exactly?
The nutrition has pointed out that the consumption of phenols is very important. Phenols or phenolic acids have a potent antioxidant activity. Phenols are naturally present in flours, in cereal flours, legumes, especially in wholemeal flours from cereals. We need to increase the bioavailability of these phenolic acids. Due to the fermentation, due to the change of the pH, which increases the level of availability of such compounds. Further, lactic acid bacteria that are naturally present in the sourdough have the capability to synthesize derivatives from these phenolic acids, which have a more potent antioxidant activity. So the other message that we have to send to consumers is that sourdough fermentation may increase the availability of potent antioxidant compounds like phenolic acids.
Another buzzword linked to our health and well-being is FODMAPs. But what are these FODMAPs actually?
FODMAP is an acronym related to fructose, oligo, D, monosaccharides and polyols. These are compounds that seem to be involved in the generation irritable bowel disease or syndrome. Many vegetables, many fruits are containing this FODMAP. Obviously, you cannot eliminate fruits and vegetables from the diet. The main recommendation, nutritional recommendation, are dealing with the decrease of the consumption of specific foods, but nevertheless we pay also attention to cereals. Cereals contain fructans, and fructans are part of this FODMAP. The content of fructans in cereals is not too high, but we have to think that we are eating a lot of cereals per day. So we have a low content of fructans, but we are ingesting a higher amount of cereals per day. So the research activity was focused on the decrease of FODMAPs, and instead of eliminating cereals, you may have a sourdough fermentation with specifically selected lactic acid bacteria that have the capability to degrade fructans into compounds that have no effect on irritable bowel disease or syndrome, so allowing the consumption of cereal products only if sourdough fermented also to people suffering of this disease.
When I arrived in the laboratory here at the University of Bolzano, Marco showed me the Chyme, a brand new simulator that models the human intestinal tract. How is this amazing piece of technology helping the scientific research?
This equipment has the capability to reproduce almost the same condition of our human intestinal tract, with the advantage that all the conditions are monitored. You may study the effect of particular dietary habits or of particular nutrients or foods under standardized conditions. Currently, we are using such type of equipment for confirming the better digestibility of the sourdough bread compared to the baker's yeast and to the chemical leavened bread, and we are thinking to show if the sourdough bread may have an effect on the diversity and functionality of the intestinal microbiome of humans.
Science is helping us understand the benefits of sourdough and natural fermentation. But is there a way to create an optimal sourdough bread?
I can answer to your question in 1-2 years. I'm starting with a new concept on the sourdough fermentation. What I would expect is to show that we will get a sourdough that is very, very stable with respect to perturbation effects like, changing the temperature, changing the pH, changing the flavor, changing the process. I would like to make a sourdough, resilient sourdough that is stable to all the predictable conditions.
The future looks and sounds exciting. The fact is, the more we understand sourdough bread, the easier it is to explain the benefits to consumers and why it is a better bread for us humans. In order to continue this research, I'm inviting you to register your sourdough on our website, thequestforsourdough.com. In that way, it might be included in these scientific studies one day. For me, it is sure, the future of bread lies in its past. Join the tradition and create the future.